When Lasha Talakhadze made this 267 kilo clean and jerk to total 492 kilos, he moved himself 4% ahead of the next strongest weightlifter ever. Why is it that after decades of no improvement in the super heavyweight category, someone comes along and extends himself so far ahead of the rest? Why is Lasha so good? So I want to know, why is it that Lasha is so good? We've all spoken about it. We've all pontificated about why he extends himself so far ahead of the rest. Max, why do you think Lasha is so good?
Well, I think as we've discussed, we've come to the conclusion that Lasha is a lifter in which the whole is greater than the sum of his parts, meaning that all of the other factors that add up to be Lasha's total, that add up to be Lasha the lifter, each individually may not be the single greatest ever in the sport,
right?
But when you combine them, you get the best ever.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think these sort of sections are strength, anatomy, and athleticism. And so what we want to do, we've got a few athletes who are right at the top of those three categories. We're going to compare Lasha to them and then compare him to basically the rest of everybody in those areas. So the first is strength. Who are we going to choose for this?
I think we'll choose a modern lifter, Gore Manassian, and a previous lifter, an old-time lifter, Andrei Chmurkin. Gore Manassian, we can tell just from watching his snatch technique, it's rough.
Right,
It's not ideal.
It's not pretty.
Yeah, bar gets away from him off the floor. He's using almost entirely his low back to do the lift.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow, though, with compromised positions, he's able to essentially power snatch 200 kilos plus. He's snatched 216 kilos.
Mm-hmm.
A remarkable number considering the number of men who've actually done that in competition. So without a doubt, Gore is incredibly strong. It's obvious because of his inefficiencies. Second, Chmurkin,
right,
the only man in the history of the sport ever to try and attempt at 600 pounds in the clean, possibly
in competition,
possibly could have made that lift had he had better mobility, better flexibility. If he could get his elbows around. We've seen countless videos of him doing front squats or cleans in which the bar doesn't even touch his shoulders until 240 plus kilos.
Mm-hmm.
Strong is a word that, is an understatement to both of these men. Clearly, they've been at the top of that. They'd be at the top of that metric.
Right. And if we were to compare Lasha to Gore on a mid-thigh pull or to Andrei Chmurkin on a squat test, he probably wouldn't win, but he's still able to outlift him. And that's because of these other two factors that we want to look at, anatomy and athleticism. Let's move on to anatomy.
Yeah, so what we would look at is Lasha is extremely tall. He's a very large man.
That is an understatement.
There have been bigger lifters and taller lifters, though, in the past.
Right.
So if we look at someone from the early 2000s, Velichko Cholokov of Bulgaria, 6'8".
Enormous, man.
Yeah, snatched 210 kilograms in competition,
right.
Medalist in the Olympics, incredibly tall. So he had the same advantage Lasha does from the sense that he could pull the bar with incredible speed. He benefited from those advantages, yet didn't lift the same weights Lasha does.
Yeah.
And then if we look at Chingiz Magushkov, a man of advanced size, humongous. We know that he was
the politest way to put it.
Possibly over 190 kilos body weight.
Yeah.
But again, very, very large.
Heaviest male weightlifter of all time.
Yeah. Extremely big, but didn't have the same level of strength and movement quality that Lasha does.
Yeah, and I think it's important to recognize these guys were as big, they were as heavy as Lasha, but they couldn't quite lift as much. And that's because the strength component that we mentioned, Lasha sits higher than them on. He may be below Gore, he may be below Chmurkin, but he's above Velichko Cholokov and he's above Chingiz Magushkov. Let's move on now to athleticism, because Lasha, this is one of the things that everybody mentions with Lasha. They do talk about how strong he is, but they say he just moves so well.
Yeah. I think we can define athleticism maybe as just the ability to manipulate their body and the barbell and the quality of that movement. If we look at lifters of the past, now, athleticism is somewhat of a subjective term here, but if we look at lifters of the past, we look at, what intangible qualities come to us when we watch those videos or we see them lift. Someone like Chigashev is just a really masterful lifter. His snatching over 210 kilos, really, really excellent execution, great mobility, great positions. It just looked so smooth and comfortable for him to do those lifts. Another example would be Stefan Botev in the clean and jerk. Just looked like if someone was to, design a lifter to do monster clean and jerks, it would look like Botev. Not super tall, but incredibly powerful, very compact, just had a perfect feel for the bar in the clean and jerk. And you can look at those two as examples of people who moved themselves very well and moved the barbell very well. And it's almost like they merged together. It's just this beautiful, beautiful technicians and movement everywhere. I would say their athleticism was near the top of that. Yeah.
Unparalleled in that super heavyweight category. I mean, someone like Chigashev is a great example because he moves so well, but he wasn't able to win the Olympic Games. He was beaten by the stronger Hussein Rezazadeh. He was beaten by the bigger, Andrei Chamerkin. Lasha is way up there in terms of his athleticism with these smaller athletes, these Chigashevs, these Stefan Botevs, and he's, he's probably 40% bigger than they are. They probably weighed 120, he weighs 180, and he's still able to move like them. So we have these three parameters. We have strength, we have anatomy, we have athleticism. He may not be at the top of any single one of them, but there's probably no weightlifter on earth, there's no weightlifter who's ever lived who has been so consistently in the top 2, 3, 4 of that kind of, factor of weightlifting as Lasha. Yeah. And it's that compounding effect that gives this man this ability to move not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4% ahead of the best super heavyweight ever, Leonid Taranenko.
Yeah. And we know that when we combine these things, we look at that, it creates this quality that's somewhat difficult to pin down. It's not that you look at Lasha and say, oh, he's just so strong that the weights move, because he isn't necessarily that freak in the strength department. He's not the one guy who looks like he's doing something so awkward or so weird, but somehow he gets away with it. Same time, he's not the tallest or largest man ever. He's definitely in the 1 percentile there, but he isn't the biggest we've ever seen. And then again, he moves extremely well, but he isn't necessarily, this small, athletic, more nimble, maybe 110 or 105 that moved up. But when we look at all of those together, you create this like image, this person who's, wow, he's really nailing every single one of those pieces perfectly.
That's it. Yeah. And that is why we think that Lasha is so good. That's why he is so many percentiles ahead of anybody else to have ever lived. Strength, anatomy, and athleticism. These are three important things that have led to the success of Lasha Talakhadze. And he and his coach make sure that all of these things are worked on. They bring up the deficit to rank highly in each department. That's what we do with weightlifting.AI. If you join the Weightlifting House team, you get access to a personalized individual program that makes sure that you are pushed up into as high a percentile as possible across the board. We'll put a link down below. You can also use code 2weektrial. You're going to get 2 weeks free, no payment details required, and you can join the future of weightlifting. Now, if you want to make sure that this level of analysis, this level of dedication is going into your program to make sure that you are optimized beyond belief, then head over to weightlifting.AI. You can join the team at Weightlifting House. We use Weightlifting.AI. We have... Is that not good?
You said optimize.
What did I say?
If you want to be optimized beyond belief. It was just such a strange statement.
I'm imagining someone like they get the app and they wake up in the morning and their coffee's already making. And that's what's popping out of the oven. And everything's already set up for them.
Optimized beyond belief.
This app does way more than I thought.
You didn't say program. If you want to be optimized beyond belief. Sorry.
Oh God.
I tried to hold it in.
Yeah,
optimized. That should be a shirt just for us.